Welcome into another edition of the 5 Reasons Podcast. My name is Chris Whittingham, joined as always by Ethan Skolnick. He joins me on the phone today. Lots to check out in the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We start first with our new website, 5reasonsports.com, bringing you all the latest news, information, and commentary on everything going on in the world of South Florida sports and beyond. Our guy Chris Joseph from Ballscast is writing on things non-sports, and a few others in the network are doing the same. And also check out our Ballscast Roundtable every other Friday. I think we're going to go with that. Just a question of nonsense that we here in the network will discuss. I always check out all the podcasts in the 5 Reasons Sports Network, Miami Heat Beat, as the season is basically wrapping up, as we'll get to in this episode. I would imagine Goldie on Ice will have some coverage of the hiring of the new Panthers coach. Should be intriguing what Joel Quenneville can do in charge of the Florida Panthers, swings and misses going every week during the Miami Marlins season, which has gotten off to a start that I think is more in keeping with what we expected, and so they will be covering that on swings and misses. But Ethan, yesterday in Toronto, it appeared as though the Heat season is just about done. They are now out of the running to win the Southeast Division, which is really all I wanted from this Heat season, but they are still in the running to get into the postseason, a game back of Detroit with 2 games left to play. But in terms of the performance in Toronto, the performances in the last week that have now sent them crashing out of the postseason, including a Friday night loss to Minnesota, a couple of losses to the Boston Celtics. They've lost 4 in a row here down the stretch. And you kind of feel, based off of what you've written, that this is sort of emblematic of the larger problem with Miami this year.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I thought they'd lose their last 6, and here we are. And, depending on who Philadelphia plays Tuesday night and what it means to Brooklyn, that could actually happen. Look, as we've talked about this season all year, we've had a couple of moments where maybe there was some hope. There was one 5-game winning streak. But other than that, this team hasn't won more than 3 games in a row at any point in the year. And so it was hard to really see where any optimism was coming from. And then you lose Josh Richardson. And obviously he's important to what they do, even if his play kind of tailed off as the season went on. And look, yesterday to me was the whole season in a nutshell. Now, I understand Toronto's really good, and I understand you're on the road, and I understand it's a 12 o'clock game, and there's a whole bunch of factors. I understand that the officiating at the end of that game did not favor Miami. I get all of that. Didn't have Richardson. But look, with 5 minutes left in that game, I tweeted this. Who's they supposed to play right now, right? I mean, yep. They're paying a ridiculous amount of money for this team, and there's one guy that he trusts, and he's 37, making $2 million a year, and he's the squirrel that they've had everybody chasing all year because Glenn Wade has been the only real reason to watch this team, with the exception of some flashes of Winslow and Adebayo. And so, but who do you trust at the end of the game? And to me, everything was summed up yesterday. Everything. The collapse down the stretch, the not getting a good shot at the end. I know the official gave the ball to the wrong guy. I get that. But the not getting it off a good shot at the end. And then, look, I would have bet any amount of money, and I should have done this, in-game betting. Once that game went to overtime, it was over. You knew they weren't winning that game. And that's just where they've been. And then to sort of put a capper on, and this is what I wrote about, and I'm not blaming the Heat. I'm not going to blame the Arisons for not wanting to pay luxury tax for this. I blame them and the rest of the organization for having a team that's not worth paying luxury tax for. Yeah. Like those are 2 different things. And so I don't blame them necessarily for the fact that they gifted Wayne Ellington, by the way, starting in Detroit, averaging 12 points a game on 38% three-point shooting. I'm not going to kill them for gifting Wayne Ellington to the team that are now chasing in the Eastern Conference, which is what kind of knew was going to happen. Okay, I'm not going to blame them for trying to get out of a year of Tyler Johnson's contract. I'm going to blame them for signing into the contract in the first place that forced them to attach Ellington to it. I'm not going to blame them necessarily for every rotation decision that was made this year. But clearly, when you look back at January now, and you look at the fact that Kelly Olynyk is one of their, and to me, more important players, averaged 16 minutes a game with a couple of DNPs, both of which they lost because they were trying, I believe, and they'll never acknowledge this, but I believe they were trying to keep his minutes down, and then they ended up having to prop up his minutes anyway, so they ended up getting the bonus, which then forced them, again, to what I'm getting to here, to dumping Rodney McGruder, who is like the symbol, other than Udonis Haslem, of Heat culture, which is this thing that you've been pushing now relentlessly. And your slogan after Heat Lifer, which bombed on you when you forced your best player, basically, to walk out the door. Not your best player, but your most important player in franchise history, to not be a lifer anymore after you were pushing that basically as a backhanded slap at LeBron. And so the alternative to that was Heat culture, which, yes, does exist in terms of what you try to do as an organization and conditioning and all of the rest of that, although don't tell Dion, right? They, in terms of the conditioning, in terms of the loyalty to the organization, etc., and propping up and building up guys to be more than they were before. And then you take the guy who was playing heavy minutes. He played 23 minutes yesterday in a must-win game, played until the 5-minute mark. Rodney McGruder was the guy subbed out for Dwayne Wade. Now, he did enter the game in overtime with it over with down 7. I don't have a problem with subbing out McGruder for Wade. My point is, obviously, you're playing that guy in that game, with the payroll that you have, and then a few hours later, you're waiving him. Like, if that doesn't symbolize what this mess has been this season, and I keep coming back to this, and you wanted me to write a headline that obviously would have irritated the Heat, which was, the Heat have become the Dolphins, which they hate that. But they're not the Dolphins. They're not. We expect more from them, right? We expect more. The Dolphins have done this silly stuff for the last 20 years. But the Heat, we're not accustomed to this. And so I don't have a problem with waiving McGruder to get under the tax. I sort of have a problem with not playing Olynyk in January because you were trying to do that. But what I have a problem with is the fact that with this kind of payroll, with that relying on Rodney McGruder in first, and that you're playing waivers and JJ down the stretch when you really don't want to.
Right, exactly, and that's, to me, sort of symptomatic of obviously you have this spend on your roster, and at a certain point you have to play those players because you're paying them a lot of money and you don't really have a lot of alternatives. Like that to me is the thing when you're looking down the stretch and you're seeing, James Johnson taking big shots. By the way, he didn't have a bad game, James Johnson, but I at the same time, there just aren't any other options. Like I understand what you're saying in, you're frustrated with this and you're frustrated with that, but with Dion and James Johnson playing a ton of minutes, but they don't have anybody else. Derrick Jones Jr. gave it a go after a couple of games out with injury, and in 4 minutes he was a -9, so they didn't really have him available. They're without Josh Richardson, which is important, and certainly, and I give the argument that the guys from Miami Heat were making, which is it was starting to roll with Justice Winslow at point guard in March, and they were winning games, and when he went out, they were still winning games, but now you're kind of seeing with him not at full fitness that it just doesn't look the same, and he hasn't been the same since coming back from that injury, and has clearly rushed back in order to do so. But I think the McGruder thing is, you're right, it is the antithesis of Heat culture, while also being utterly insignificant, because Rodney McGruder is just not an NBA rotation player. I don't think. I don't think it's that important of a miss, but as you said, you got to a stage where you had to rely on him. You got to a stage early in the year where you would kind of manufacture Rodney McGruder, and in some respects, Rodney McGruder as a symbol for Heat culture is precisely accurate in that they can manufacture NBA quality play out of about anyone that's available on the scrap heap. I mean, you look at, Derrick Jones Jr. being turned into a guy, Rodney McGruder being turned into a guy, hell, even James Johnson and Hassan Whiteside and Dion Waiters, who were all available for less than $5 million, in the last 5 years, all being paid a lot of money by your organization, in some respects is the embodiment of what the culture can do for a player's career. But I think now you're starting to realize that maybe that value proposition isn't that important. It just isn't that important for a team to be able to manufacture these rotation players. It's important, once you're the Philadelphia 76ers and you have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and you're capped out and you have to find something from somebody, and you turn to a player like Rodney McGruder, a player like Derrick Jones Jr., who you can manufacture quality play out of, but you have to have that base first. And so while obviously Pat Riley and the organization kind of fell in love with what they were able to do with these players and rewarded them for putting in that work, I think we're now starting to realize 3 years later, when their record over a 3-year period is 123 and 121, that maybe it just isn't that important that they're able to do this.
Well, you're right. I mean, you have to have the base, and they don't know how to get the base now, and part of that is because they took some of these players we've covered that on. They took some of these players who they could have manufactured in other ways, and they decided to give them exorbitant contracts. Like when they knew that they could sell. And I have no doubt that Yonte Mason, who they just signed to a contract yesterday, is going to be a good NBA rotation player, because I just trust the Heat on that. Like, they're good at that. Like, if they identified this guy as that, that's probably what he's going to be. Now, the problem is if they decide to pay him later on. So, again, look, I wasn't in favor of giving Rodney McGruder a big contract today. That's not it. The point of this is that, A, enough with the slogan. No more slogans, please. No Heat lifer, no Heat culture, none of this garbage, okay? Build a team, okay? It's enough, okay? It's enough for this stuff. I mean, every time they do a slogan, they have to do something to undercut the slogan. And I don't really blame them for that because that's basketball business. Like, there are not many lifers in the NBA. Like, the reason Dirk Nowitzki is being celebrated, the reason Tim Duncan was celebrated, is because that does not, Manu Ginobili, that does not happen. I mean, Tony Parker's playing freaking Charlotte. Okay, like there's no such thing as a lifer. If anybody was going to be a lifer, it was going to be LeBron James 30 minutes from where he was born. So that was a dumb. Okay, it was dumb. All right, and I said repeatedly they pushed back on that, and then again they pushed their most important player in franchise history out the door. Okay, where he ended up taking safety plus money from a place he didn't really want to go to after he's getting taxes, to go there because he was insulted, because he didn't feel like a lifer, the way that he was being treated on the way out. So that one was over with. And culture, yeah, I get it. But how do you talk about culture when Deion Waiters is playing in this kind of shape? Like, I mean, and the problem is that they got played by it, okay? Because James Johnson kept putting it on social media. And Deion Waiters wrote a really great, it's really well written, I would say, actually. Nice work. His Players Tribune piece, okay, about, how Kevin Durant was lucky, and the Warriors were lucky that Deion was not in the playoffs. I mean, that's, we kept saying Heat culture, and then he went into Riley's office. Like, I mean, no more slogans. I mean, one last dance, that was Dwayne's slogan. Okay, that one's fine. But the rest of it, like, just build the team. And the concern about it now, okay, but one more thing before I get to this, when I want to get to Dwayne's slogan, is that how are they worse than last year? How are they worse?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
You had them to win the division, right?
Yeah.
So I had them over 42.5. I didn't think it would be by much, but I thought in this conference, this bullshit, they would be slightly over. Okay, here's the thing. You talk about the things that broke wrong, right? Like Winslow and Richardson getting hurt at the end of the year, Dragic extended out, technically underplayed. Florence and four. Okay, Florence problematic in some ways because it takes the ball away if you're trying to develop justice at the same position. That's tough, but Corey as a player, you want, and a personality and everything else, you want him on your team, you want him playing. So they did lose Goran for a period of time. All right, obviously they've had other injuries. Derek Jones Jr. was starting to get going. He gets hurt. They had some stuff at camp. Okay, they had the situation with Jimmy Butler, which they don't like their news getting out there. It got out there. I do believe it. I said it in camp. I thought it was affecting players. They had guys going in and out. Maybe it's tough team to coach. All of those things aside, okay, they had 37-year-old Dwayne Wade averaging 20 points a game over the last 3 weeks. After a summer of indecision and inactivity, he's averaging 20, playing every game since the tournament, right? There was no way to expect that. That's a big positive on the upside. Hassan Whiteside has been basically a model citizen for months. Like, who expected that? Like, but the way that the end of the last season ended, did you think that there would be times at the end of this year where Hassan would be, for stretches, the best player on the floor, like he was the other night?
No,
like,
I mean, that game against Minnesota, he was amazing.
He was amazing. It's the best he's played in forever. I give Fulcher credit for that. I give organization. I give Hassan enormous credit for that. Everything from Hassan here. I give him enormous credit for that. For him to perform like that after he got shuttled to the bench, he's not happy about that. But to still play at that level, so that's a positive on the upside. Justice Winslow's breakout, okay, to whatever it was going to be, right, this year, is a positive on the upside. Bam Adebayo playing the way he's played the last couple of months, and then playing well with him in the starting lineup, positive for the upside. So you have, four or five positives, right? The other positive, you're in a crappy-ass conference once you get past top five. Like, look what Detroit, Orlando, and Brooklyn are running out there. Like, these are not the Nets are a nice story. Sean Marks has done a great job. These are not the Nets of Pierce and Garnett, okay, and Joe Johnson. Like, come on.
No, and also, I mean, you talk about a thing breaking right for you. They finished, or they're either going to finish either one game below or one game above 500 on the road. I mean, Charlotte, who's above you, is 13-27 on the road. Detroit, who's above you, is 14-26 on the road. The way that this season went wrong is they're a catastrophe at home.
Right.
That just doesn't make any sense, right? If you're saying why would a Heat team be more likely to be bad at home, it's not like the crowd is bad. It's not like you can't put a finger on it. They've been a complete disaster at home, and all those losses early in the year to those crappy teams are the reason why they're nowhere near the playoffs. Well, okay, they're a game back of the playoffs, but they're in this position.
Vice jerseys, one last dance, Dwayne's introductions. I mean, it's not like the marketing department didn't do their job.
We'll get back to today's episode in a second, but first I want to tell you about one of our new sponsors here in the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is the attorneys at Seltzer Mayberg. Find them at onecalllegal.com. That's O-N-E, calllegal.com, or actually call 855 5000 Law LAW. They handle cases including but not limited to car accidents, slip and falls, and any personal injury matters. Additionally, if you mention 5 Reasons, they will handle your traffic ticket for $44.99 with a new 15,000 square foot office opening on I-95 in North Miami. They will handle cases all over South Florida. Call now with 24/7 service for a free consultation. OneCallLegal.com or 855-5000-LAW. The attorneys at Seltzer Mayberg, a proud sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
You're listening to the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've created a menu of intelligent and entertaining content on demand for commutes, workouts, and more. And by now, you're already familiar with the 15 different podcasts in our network. Today, we are proud to announce the premiere of our brand new website, 5reasonsports.com. On it, you'll find columns from more than a dozen of our hosts, many who are professional writers in the market. Watch original videos from shows like Miami Heat Beat and Balls Cast. Browse our full merchandise shop. And unlike other outlets in the area, there's no paywall. Everything is absolutely free. All of this from a network that's credentialed from all 5 major sports teams in South Florida. Oh yeah, did we mention that it's free? We're by Miami for Miami. We're sports on your schedule. We're Miami Sports on Demand. We're the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Go to 5reasonsports.com today.
And to me, it's kind of incredible that they still run the promo for Vice jerseys in the fourth quarter. Like, it's just sort of been carved out. This is the Vice jerseys window. And, like, it's, 5 minutes to play in the fourth quarter, and they're still like, hey, here's some Vice jerseys over here. Like they still run that out there as, like, a promo that they run in the TV broadcast in the fourth quarter. I'm looking at it going, really? We're still trying to sell people Vice jerseys game 80 of the regular season as as this thing that's happening on the side from this team that's going to miss the playoffs in this conference?
How do they distract people last year? How do they distract people next year, Chris? I mean, what do you do? I mean, you don't have the Dwayne squirrel. Like, you pivot in the offseason to Justice, Bam, and Josh. I mean, again, I'm a big fan of all 3 of those guys. I'm higher on the upside of at least 2 of them than a lot of people are. But, like, I don't know what you're selling. I mean, you're selling having Bosch and Battier in the organization. You're selling, and I'm not calling in my column. I'm very clear in the last paragraph. I'm not calling for any front office change. I'm not calling for anybody to be fired. I'm not calling for anybody to be reassigned. I'm not calling for anybody to be retired before he wants to be retired. Okay? None of it. All right. But what I am saying, and maybe we can title this way, to me, we just had one last dance. This offseason, in terms of building the belief back in this organization, for me, is one last chance. Okay, that's where this organization is. They need to build the belief back. They need, because people now view this. When people were saying I was too negative earlier in the year and writing these columns, but where is this organization going? Are they picking a direction? And I'm getting pushback from inside, but the fans are all saying right. Okay.
Yeah.
And now here we are at the end of this, except the fans on our network. And then we're here early. And we're here at the very end of this thing. Okay. I love you, John. And what was the direction this season? What was it? 5 minutes left in a critical game that you at certain points were leading by a significant margin. Okay, against the second best team in the league, who was playing everybody. Like, wasn't like, I mean, not everybody. They're playing their core. Okay, Like, and I said it was 5 minutes left. Who's he supposed to play right now?
Yeah.
Who's he playing?
And they're playing 2-3 zone, Ethan. They're playing 2-3 zone. What are they doing playing 2-3 zone?
Because all of this, look, I'm not going to buy into this belief that Eric Spoelstra's setting up. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do it. I know there's a contingent of fans out there that's been looking out on him for years, gave it up for a little bit, came back to it. It's always the go-to, right? But I'm not going to be one of those who thinks he suddenly got stupid. You look at the things he did this year, and I look, and I know we discussed this on a previous pod, but I looked at the hand he's dealt. Okay, I'm not saying he played it perfectly. Or even close. Okay, you've dealt bad hands. Sometimes you take chances you wouldn't ordinarily take, and they backfire, right? But and a lot of his is backfired. A lot of his. So the 2-3 zone lately. I want one of our guys, maybe Christian to look at the numbers against his own, against good teams in the last month, because it can't be good. It just can't be. I mean, Boston figured it out, Toronto figured it out, but if you look at it, he's out-talented every night, right?
Mm.
So looking at it, and you're like, okay, I can play this guy, but if I play this guy, like Olenek, good example. I banged on them for not playing him in January. To me, it was a money move. You and I both talk about he makes things flow offensively, okay? That to play him against certain teams, you have to adjust defensively. And so the zone makes more sense, okay? Some of the other players, you've got Wayne, at 37 years old, who you're relying on for more minutes than you anticipated. So to protect him, you need to play a little bit of zone. There's other guys in the roster you need to play zone. Goran at times, you need to play zone. Okay, I mean, Justice and Josh, are guys who you wouldn't think you would have to, right? But because they've been given a more of an offensive burden this year, I think some of it was done to kind of protect their legs a little bit and get them through the season. And we saw what happened. Both guys, maybe coincidental, but both guys broke down at the end of the year a little bit, right? And they had more of a burden this season. So I look at the zone that way, and I say, okay, he's playing it because he doesn't think he can play man-to-man with this group. And, right? And who gave him the group? And then you look at the other thing. He's playing James Johnson and Deion Williams on the stretch. You're right. James played well yesterday. Okay, but I mean, I didn't count those on one hand this year. And he's playing him down the stretch. He hit that corner three. I was stunned. I was like, oh my God. Okay, but then he got another one, and it gets to him at the end of the possession, and it's like, well, still, do you really want that? You know what's amazing about this too? We talked at the beginning of the season how they had so many small guards, right? So much duplication. Okay, Tyler's gone. Ellington's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
McGruder's gone. Dwayne will be gone. They wish Deion would be gone. Okay, so it's going to be Josh, I guess, inheriting his natural position next year, hopefully, and Goran if he's back.
Right.
I mean, they have set small guards. It's just, and I speak with frustration from this in the way that I don't about the Dolphins, and it's not like I think less of the key. It's because I think more.
Yeah,
right?
You have higher more expectations.
I don't get worked up about the Dolphins. I just don't.
Well, you got worked up about Adam Gase.
I don't get worked up. Because I get worked up about perceptions that I believe in. And there was a perception about Gase that was like statistically totally unsupportable.
Yeah.
And so I identified that, and then it played out. The Marlins, I don't get worked up about the Marlins now because it's a different regime, and I don't get worked about the Panthers because a coach got fired yesterday and no one knew who he was. Okay, like but this is the Heat. This is the Heat. This is the shining light. This is the beacon on the hill, right? This has been bad, and I just think we need to call it for what it is. Now, it doesn't mean it can't get better, and like I said, it's not like I'm saying that anybody should be fired. Pat should go when he wants to go, okay? And he's the best at what he does. So I still have belief in Spo, okay? I think Shane Battier is an asset to the organization. I still think the Irish teams are good owners, okay? None of this is, this is not what we would call kind of a secular change, okay? In terms of when you're evaluating stocks. Like, this is not a permanent thing. But we have to be straight. There are organizations that have been really good for a long time, and then they're not. Like Joe Dumars is considered to be a crappy GM now in retrospect because he took Darko. But Joe Dumars built that team that had 5 pieces that interlocked perfectly. He brought in Rasheed Wallace, and he won a championship without a star and could have won a second, right? And then he wasn't smart enough. Mm-hmm. So it happened. It happened. And and Joe hasn't gotten another job, has he? So,
no, he's not.
And there are a lot of, right? So, I mean, again, I'm not saying that Joe Dumars was on Pat Riley's level. There was a period of time where Joe Dumars' team was giving Pat Riley's team fit. Okay, so I just think we have to, Stan Van Gundy was considered really, really smart by the league until it didn't work out, in Detroit. I mean, it happened, and we think Stan's smart, but it didn't work out. Like, there are just situations where it just doesn't work anymore. And, I mean, I'm not saying we're there yet. I want to be clear on that, but I'm saying we're a lot closer than I thought we would be at any point during this, regime.
That'll do it for today's edition of the 5 Reasons Sports Podcast. A quicker episode because tomorrow we'll continue talking about the Miami Heat and Dwayne Wade's final home game at American Airlines Arena as they take on the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll do some Wade big picture thoughts on what this one last dance has meant, what he's meant to Miami, what he's meant to the two of us. So that's coming tomorrow. So be sure to check that out right here on these same platforms where you're listening to this podcast. Check out everything at 5reasonsports.com, including how to listen to all of the episodes and all of the podcasts in the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the 5 Reasons Podcast. Thank you so much.